speak with thee, wilt thou be grieved? Is it going to upset you if we talk at this point? Would it be better if we would just keep quiet? And I wish Job would have answered him right then and said, look, I'd rather why don't you just hold your peace and we'll just sit and mourn for a while. But unfortunately, Job didn't say anything, so the guy goes on. And then he says, but who can withhold himself from speaking? I mean, I'd like to, I just got to say something now. Just bubbling over with something to say. In the book of Proverbs, it talks about a man with wisdom is like a well. And wells don't bubble up on you. You go to draw from a well. So someone that bubbles up like a brook, like a babbling, bubbling brook, probably not going to do all that well. Eliphaz is going to, we're going to see Eliphaz's error in these next two chapters. And we'll identify what the error is in the way he speaks and thinks. So let's just read through and see what he says. So I can't keep myself from speaking. You know, if you only had the book of James, you would have realized, be swift to hear, be slow to speak. Just settle down here. Verse 3. So now he starts speaking to Job. Behold, thou hast instructed many. Thou hast strengthened the weak hands. Thy words have upholden him that was falling. And thou hast strengthened the feeble. So he starts out with a nice compliment. And he's just telling him, you know, you've done a lot of good things in the past. You've helped a lot of people in the past. Now, unfortunately, this is a pattern. What Eliphaz is about to do now, after opening with a compliment, he's going to now follow up with some criticism. And this is a pattern you'll find in mankind all the way down through the ages. You know, if you want to criticize someone, first give them a compliment, then criticize them. And Dr. Butler, I was looking at a few writers of Job today. I'm going to draw from some of the things they've taken down, along with putting in some things that I have received from the Lord. But I want to give you all the ingredients from, we got Dr. Butler, Dr. Ruckman, and Dr. Wearsby looking at some of the better things and we're putting it together. But Dr. Butler says, you got to watch out. Many folk, what they like to do is they compliment in order to criticize. So don't get too excited if somebody comes at you with a compliment. You better hold them a distance away like a rose, because roses often have thorns. And along with what looks sweet and smells good is going to be something that's going to stab you. And that's about what he's going to do, because first he gives him this nice compliment in the first two verse 3 and 4. You know, oh wow, you've strengthened people, you've strengthened people, you've helped people, you've upheld people, by the way, that's good. And I say that's the way to live your life. Words can encourage troubled hearts. Words can stir up someone who's attempting to try on a new endeavor and he falls down and you lift him up with the words and you push him forward. I mean, what Job had done, what Eliphaz is telling us about Job, is that's a good thing. No wonder God spoke of him as an upright man. No wonder God commended him for that. I mean, there are so many people on planet Earth that put people down, that criticize people, that backstab people, that speak lowly of people. The neighbor findeth no good in his eyes, it says about the wicked man in Proverbs. He's always finding the fault with somebody, fault-finding people. What a blessing it is to someone that overlooks faults and instead instructs, strengthens, upholds. Isn't that nice? Wouldn't you like to be known as someone like that? Isn't that someone good to follow? Amen. I bet Jesus was like that. Isn't that what he did? Amen. He saw a lot of people with needs and he upheld them and he strengthened them and he instructed them. And that's what people need. And Job had done that. This is all good. But now, watch him turn this around. And he turns it around and he says, verse 6 is not this thy fear? Thy confidence, thy hope in the uprightness of thy ways. I mean, you are counting on the fact that you're Mr. Upright. You're Mr. Good Man. Okay? You've put a lot in what you've done, and you feel this is what makes you the man that you are. By the way, it is good that you do those things, but you know where the strength comes from? We do things through Christ. Amen. And what Job did wasn't done in his own power. By the way, the God of the Old Testament no different than the God of the New Testament. Anybody that did anything right in the Old Testament, that did something that was good, goodness comes from God. Job worshiped God, and in the worship of God, God filled him and allowed him through wisdom to instruct. Allowed him through putting strength in him to strengthen someone else. Allowed him through encouraging Job in his own life to go encourage others.
Amen.
Job had no thought that this is me doing it, but now Eliphaz is looking at it. Now here's one other thing that I'm observing, and one of the other writers was observing. Until this happened to Job, according to God's testimony, Job was the greatest man in the East. He was a man that was perfect, he was upright, he eschewed evil, and he was the greatest man in the East. And so let me translate that for you. In the community, the one with the preeminence was Job. And no offense, but the second fiddle was Eliphaz. Now all of a sudden, Eliphaz gets to see the guy that was a little bit above him knocked down. And human nature is a funny thing. When someone a little bit better than you is knocked down, it kind of makes you feel a little better. And now if he's knocked down, the question is, why is he knocked down? And Eliphaz is going to, his error, he's going to make he's going to make two, if you will, arguments in his sermon about Job. And the arguments are going to be based on his own personal spiritual observations and his own experience. And he's going to base it on the fact that, and here's the thought that he has. And it goes back to what we call logic. This is an amazing thing as I was reading through this and thinking about it. Now, many centuries after these guys are done talking one to another, some Greeks are going to come on the scene, and they're going to come up with something called philosophy. And in the field of philosophy, they're going to come up with something called reason and logic. And what we're going to find out is Eliphaz is going to be, if you want to look at him, he's basically a philosopher about 15 centuries before Aristotle. And Eliphaz and Job and all these men of the East, along with Abraham and all these Shemites with this Jewish influence, are head and shoulders above the Greeks. They're much deeper thinkers than the Greeks, and most Greek philosophy, believe it or not, is stolen from Jewish writings and then just repackaged, and the world gives all the credit to the Greeks as if they came up with it. Just like the world did in our past 2 centuries, giving all the credit to a man with a beard that supposedly grew up in a log cabin that was the 16th president when he said, "A house divided against itself shall not stand." Gee, that's real interesting that man gets credit for that statement. Wasn't there a man by the name of Jesus Christ that said that 2,000 years before Lincoln said it? But you don't see the world giving credit to Christ or the New Testament. They give it to Lincoln. And the philosophers are going to steal from Eliphaz. He's a philosopher, but unlike the Greek philosophers who only think about man and astronomy and geometry, he thinks about God. He's a theologian, if you will. Theos, he studies God. He studies God. But what we're going to find out about Eliphaz, he's about to make the same mistake. He's going to make a mistake that Aristotle will eventually talk about later. It's called syllogism. And this is how a syllogism works. And this man is putting together the first syllogism here, and I don't know if I can spell this right. I don't know if it's 1 L or 2 syllogism. But a syllogism is like this. You make a major premise, number one. You make a minor premise, and then you come up with a conclusion. The classic one you've all heard is, let's say, all men are mortal. Premise number one. Premise number two, it was Aristotle that did this. So he talked about his teacher. Socrates is a man. Therefore, based on 1 and 2, therefore Socrates is all men. No, is mortal. Socrates is mortal. Do you see that? Do you see? You take the major premise, the minor premise, you come up with a conclusion. Eliphaz is going to do the same thing. Eliphaz is going to, his major premise from his philosophy and thinking, and I don't want to pick on him in this sense, he doesn't have a Bible. He doesn't have chapter 1 and 2 of Job like we do. He doesn't know what's going on there. He doesn't have a New Testament. He doesn't have the writings of Isaiah or David. He's been living by oral tradition for 2,000 years, and he's thinking to the best of his ability, by the way, which is better than probably all of us in this room combined. Because I got to imagine a man living back then that lived to the age of 180. We lived to about 70 or 80. We have IQs of 100. His IQ is probably close to 200. He's done a lot of things, but what we're going to find out about him is without the revelation of God, the best human mind makes error in its theology and its philosophy. His major premise is going to be God rewards righteousness.
Amen.
And God punishes evil. That's the major premise. Number 2, Job is being punished. Therefore, conclusion, Job is evil. And that's basically the syllogism he's coming up with as a philosopher, theologian, making his observations as to what's happening. Now, he doesn't understand many things about God because they haven't been given. Later on, that Jesus Christ would say in the Gospel of John, I'll find the passage for you, judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment. That's the Gospel of John, chapter 7, verse 24. So Eliphaz is going to come up with a philosophical syllogism, and he's going to apply it to this man that's hurting right here. Now let me just say this, because his measure of faith was not that. Does that mean that the battery died? This has happened before. I didn't turn it off. Not that it matters. It's a few people.
Do you have your batteries in the office?
I'm looking, we're looking. Test. We got it? Okay. So Eliphaz is going to, as a philosopher, and this is why we've often said, philosophy cannot lead you to the knowledge of God.
That's right, amen.
No matter how good a philosopher you are, even if you are a theological philosopher with the mind of an Eliphaz, with the age of an Eliphaz, and having heard the truth from the beginning of mankind, what little you know about your Creator God, you cannot understand Him. But let me go a step further. Because here we sit with 66 books of the Bible, of which Eliphaz had none. We have 66 now, including what Eliphaz said, including what God said about Job, including all the Old Testament writings and all the New Testament writings. And here's God would like us to understand, it's a dangerous thing for us to try to explain to people going through trials what the ways are of God in their life, to play the part of God. And this is why God is giving this example to us. He's saying, look, you're probably not as smart as Eliphaz. You're probably not as old as Eliphaz. And my ways are not your ways.
Amen.
And my thoughts are not your thoughts.
Amen.
And my ways are higher than your ways.
Amen.
And what's going to happen is Eliphaz is going to be the first to lobby, and then his two friends are going to jump in and say the same things, similar things in the next few chapters. And what the mistake that they make is when Job is going through this trial, Job is going to say some things that we ordinarily will not say when we've been hit and beaten up. And you don't respond to the words of a man in a trial. You need to, as Paul said, you need to weep with them that weep. You need to mourn with those that mourn. You need to enter into their sorrows and to empathize and sympathize with them. You need to be a partaker of their sorrows, not the explainer of their sorrows.
Amen.
Amen.
And that's kind of a mistake. Another thing we're going to find out about them, because they don't have a lot of Bible, they have a very small concept of God. And they don't understand all they know about is God is the creator, God is the judge. Last thing we remember was the flood.
Amen.
The story we heard before the flood, Noah told his kids, who told us, and Shem told, we've all heard about it, is before that, they were tossed out of the garden. So one thing we know about this creator God, he is a judge. What they don't know yet at this point in time is that same judge made man in his image and is desirous to have mercy and grace with that individual. And they didn't understand the mercy and the grace of God. So they make, this is a mistake to think that God rewards righteousness and punishes evil here and now. That's their mistake. They didn't understand the bigger picture.
Amen.
They didn't have the written revelation of God. We do. And the other thing about these men, and you'll find with Eliphaz too, he's just a little too proud and I think a little too happy that his so-called superior was now knocked down in his eyes. And think about that. You have this evangelist you admire, this pastor you admire, this Christian friend of yours that you admire. He always seems to be doing a little better than you, and then all of a sudden big problems in his life, and you can think, wow, this hasn't happened to me. I must be better, more right with God than he is. He's got something. Now I've got the superior position. And that's the spirit that lusts in man to envy. And envy, I think, is Eliphaz, a little bit of envy going in there too. So he goes on, and he says, so you thought this was your confidence. Now he says, I want you to remember verse 7. Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent. Where were the righteous cut off? Implication, you're going through a time of being cut off. You're going through a time of where you're facing some perishing of your finances and perishing of your family and your health. Obviously, you're not innocent. Obviously, you're not righteous. That's the conclusion he's coming to. Verse 8, even as I have seen, they that plow iniquity and sow wickedness, they reap the same. So let's see, I see all this going on to you. You must be doing things behind our back. You must be a hypocrite. You know, it's a sad thing. You know how this week I was with some men of God that serve God. And one of them brought me an evil report about another pastor I know in another city. And I said, brother, that ain't true. That man's a good man. That man's serving God. But I was stunned at how quickly they swallowed that evil report. Hey, don't you be of that nature and mindset.
Amen.
Wanting to see the worst in someone else and swallowing any evil report that comes along about some man of God or some servant of God, a woman who's one of the daughters of the children of the king, and then all of a sudden you're willing to believe an evil report. How quickly we're really ready to swallow bad news. That's what the world does. That's why political ads are evil. Because they know that people will believe evil before they'll believe good.
Amen.
People will receive a bad report rather than a good report.
Amen.
Have you ever tried to give the gospel to someone?
Yeah.
There's something wrong about the fallen nature. So he's making these conclusions in his mind, this false philosophical reasoning he's coming up with. Verse 9, for people that plow iniquity and sow wickedness. By the blast of God they perish. By the breath of his nostrils they are consumed. The roaring of the lion, the voice of the fierce lion, the teeth of the young lions are broken. The old lion perisheth for lack of prey, and a stout lion's whelps are scattered abroad. What are you saying there? He's saying, you were the lion of our community. You were the big one in our community. And you probably thought you were above judgment. You thought you could get away with anything and do anything you wanted. Hey, but God judges real lions. And if he can judge a powerful king of the forest and a beast like that, he can do that to you too. And again, these barbs that he's throwing at this man that's wounded, right? He's throwing fiery darts at a man that's wounded. A man that's too weak to hold up the shield of faith. Please, brothers and sisters, think about this when someone is wounded.
Amen. Amen.
You know, at one point, I'm trying to remember where the doc was talking about it. I mean, Eliphaz is basically saying, and Doc puts it this way, the trouble is you have helped others in the past, so physician, heal thyself. They did that to Jesus, by the way, when he was on the cross. Oh, he saved others, but himself he cannot save. This pointing the finger at someone. Now, the truth of the matter is, it is easier to give advice than it is to take it. And so, yes, Job gave a lot of advice, and now Eliphaz is saying, well, you give it, but you can't take it. Well, it is easier to give rather than to take. And the thing for me, when I'm watching this, and Eliphaz is making a mistake here that's going to be repeated throughout the ages, but my observation is this: I'm hoping that with the grace of God and the growth through reading our scriptures, we will mature as we age, not to make that mistake. But who tends to speak like Eliphaz today are young preachers. Young preachers have the answers to everything. They can sit by and they can give all this theological Bible doctrine to someone who's going through problems. The doc was saying, I remember I had a friend of mine named John who was in a wheelchair. And this guy was in a wheelchair for decades. And the pain from the wheelchair and the sores that he got, and eventually he took some pain medications and he ended up getting addicted to pain medication. And at some point even he would drink just to kill the pain. Alcohol does kill pain sometimes. He says, and it's real easy. He's sleepless nights, going through pain, and it's real easy for a healthy man who can still play tennis and volleyball and take a hike to stand over someone and talk about these habit-forming drugs and how dare you fall into all of this when you're not living through it. And young preachers can sit there and pull Bible verses out about the way you're supposed to live. They haven't lived through very much. And when people are going through the loss of a child, or a motor vehicle accident that causes some type of a break in their spine, and now they're struggling with the very things we talked about, addictions, and then you're pointing the finger at them, like it's come upon you, some type of hypocrite, you're being punished. Thank goodness for older preachers.
Amen.
Who've been through a few things that have been tempered by God and know how to have mercy and grace, and sometimes listen and just be there with someone who's suffering. Rather than try to have all the answers, because we don't have all the answers.
Right. Amen.
And so he's just kind of, he opens with a compliment, and then he just hits him with all the thorns on the stem of this rose. He's ripped the petals off. And then he goes on, the next thing, his observations are going to be based on his own philosophical reasoning, the own observations that he's got in life, where you can't make a righteous judgment just based on seeing, because faith cometh by hearing. We walk not by sight.
Amen.
And here's the problem he's making. So now he goes, well, let me show you something. I got some inside knowledge here. And then he says, verse 12, now a thing was secretly brought to me, and mine ear received a little thereof, and the thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep falleth on men, fear came upon me, and trembling, which made all my bones to shake, and then a spirit passed before my face, and the hair of my flesh stood up. And I stood still, but I could not discern the form thereof. An image was before mine eyes. There was silence. Then I heard a voice saying. And then he's going to go on, he's going to give this message. Now, what's going on here is one of the sad things that goes on all through the centuries, is this desire for some hidden, secret, inner knowledge. Now, many different commentators don't know how to go with this because they think, well, it's possible God spoke to him. Maybe this was a spirit from God that spoke to him. Because let's go back in your Bible, go to Numbers chapter 20, verse 6. And so people fall on both sides of the fence. Now, I know which the right side of the fence is to fall on. I'm going to show you from the Bible. But let's see. I'll find it. I might have the wrong reference. I'll find it for you. Hold on, I'll get it. These things happen. Sometimes I write the wrong reference down. It's the reference where God is telling them, I'll speak to them in a vision where they rebelled against them, Moses. Let me find it, give me a second. Numbers 12, not 20, Numbers 12 and verse 6. Numbers 12 and verse 6. And this is when the Miriam and Aaron were rising up against Moses. And then the Lord, verse 5, he came down in the pillar of the cloud, and he stood in the door of the tabernacle, and he called them, Aaron and Miriam, and they came forth, and he said to them, hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. All right. So the possibility is Eliphaz here is really getting a prophetic message from God. And some people took it that way because the book of Hebrews tells us that in the Old Testament, God spake in various ways, diverse manners, sundry times, and backed up by the prophets, and he would do dreams and visions. So is this from God? Well, God's going to give you the answer. Go to Job chapter 42. Job chapter 42. So maybe this is really a spirit that came from God. I didn't think so reading it, but now this verse will nail it shut for you. Chapter 7. And this is when the Lord is speaking. Job chapter 42, verse 7. And it was so that after the Lord had spoken these words to Job, then the Lord said to Eliphaz the Temanite, my wrath is kindled against thee and against thy two friends, for ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right. So you think that came from God? That dream? Would God give him something wrong?
No.
Does God give wrong information to a prophet?
Oh, no.
So back to where we are. So that's not from God.
No.
So one of the things God's trying to teach us all through here is you got to watch it if you get a dream, if you get a vision, if you get any kind of a spiritual angel that comes and talks to you, you have to be aware. And now, one of the reasons people do this, and they do this today, I had a dream in my bed. I had a vision at night in my bed. And the sad thing that bothers me is Christians buy this stuff, hook, line, and sinker. They sell books about it. I guess some little kid supposedly died and went to heaven and came back, and they wrote a book about it. Please. That isn't possible according to the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
If you read your Bible, who are the two people you know that went to heaven? John and Paul. What were they allowed to speak about? They were words that were not lawful to be uttered. Anything seen up there is not to be brought back by human voice here. The only words about heaven are to be found in a Bible. God didn't permit what this 4-year-old kid's above Paul. Mm-hmm. The apostle chosen by God. He's above the apostle that God used to give 5 books of the Bible. No, he isn't. Let me help you. Modern Christians who are so confused and go see movies and listen to people on television and go pay to watch them tell you nothing it's just a lie. They're lying prophets.
Amen.
Eliphaz here is a lying prophet. It's, where's that other? 1 Kings chapter 13, verse 18. 1 Kings chapter 13, 18. I'll just remind you, we studied it, we were there a long time ago. Here's how it goes. 1 Kings 13, 18. And he said to the young prophet, I am also a prophet, also as thou art. And an angel spake to me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with thee into thine house, that he may eat bread and drink water, period. And the Holy Ghost says, but he lied unto him. This thing about visions and dreams, only the dreamer knows what the dream was. Only the dreamer can report it. This encourages a fraud, because how can you argue with the report? But the Bible, it can be verified. It can be tested. It can be examined. It can be studied.
Amen.
Dreams and visions can't be. So you don't want to trust these things. Now, going back to this man's time, before there was a Bible, what was happening to him? He was having a dream. Nothing more, nothing less. Where do dreams come from? It's interesting. There is a companion book to Job in spirit, if you will. It's the book of Ecclesiastes. What you're going to find is neither Job, nor Eliphaz, nor Bildad, nor Zophar have a Bible. All of their comments are going to be the best they can come up with on observation, hearing from tradition and history, because no Bible has been written. So all of their observations are based on life under the sun. There's another book like that. It's called Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
It's about a man that determined to find out, what can I learn under the sun? Without God's wisdom, without a Bible, without taking anything of revelation, what can I learn from science and what can I learn from philosophy? You know what he said? It's all vanity. Now going back in terms of this dream that Eliphaz has, go to that book of Ecclesiastes and go to chapter 5. Because Eliphaz had a dream. Big deal. We all have dreams.
Amen.
What are they worth?
Nothing.
Nothing. That with a quarter can't even get you a cup of coffee. They're not worth anything. So go back to Ecclesiastes chapter 5 and see what God says about dreams. Verse 2 of the 5th chapter, be not rash with thy mouth. Okay. And verse 2, let thy words be few. Verse 3, for a dream cometh through the multitude of busyness, and a fool's voice is known by the multitude of words. Go to verse 7, same chapter. In the multitude of dreams and many words there are also diverse vanities. So this man had a dream. The dream came from his business. You know what his business? He's a philosopher. This is the first philosopher.
Right.
And I understand.